Hey guys, Matt, IronTrap Garage, and today we're going to discuss the 33 three-window project. So we get probably one of our most commented things is asking about, or questions, is asking about what's going on with this car. It's obviously in the background all the time, and yes, it looks badass, but there is a plan rather than just sit here and collect dust. So we did address some of this in our podcasts and things, but not everybody listens to those. So the engine has been away with Ron Sangiovanni, Ronnie Roadster, for a little while now, and he's been picking away at it and made a lot of progress recently. So I've been kind of stalled on the car because there's a handful of things I started to build. Like I built these zoomy headers, and then I started questioning if some things were going to be different when the engine was together or fittings. So I kind of stalled on it, same with the firewall and some different parts. So today we're going to walk around and show you a little bit what's going on. And that is because the engine is done, finally. What we're planning on doing in some upcoming videos, so make sure you keep an eye if you're interested in this engine and all the stuff going on with this car. We're gonna have a handful of videos coming up where we're gonna do a video obviously on picking the engine up, running the engine, and Ryan and I are gonna discuss some of the important information we found out about those heads that I found in that auction years ago. Pretty special set of heads, so definitely want to tune in that. Try and do a podcast interview with Ron about just everything with Ron, which will be super exciting. And yeah, we're gonna pick the engine up. So because of that, I need to look at this car, and this is kind of, Mike and I are gonna walk around the car and show you a lot of the stuff I need to do, because this is what we do a lot of mornings when we all get together and drink our coffee before we start the day. We look at the cars and try and figure out what's next for videos and tackling projects. So let's see what the hell's going on. So,
should we start at the front and work our way back?
Yeah. So the last video we did on this was actually not that long ago, where I got the radiator mounted and the grill mounted, and then I modified the original set of blisters. So I had these blisters, I think, kicking around from the 34 state.
I think so, yeah.
In Michigan. So we pulled it off my stash. They were a little beat up. I hammered them out, modified them, got them to fit. The most important thing was I have the headers bit on this side, so this is kind of giving you the look I was going for. So having the blister hide the front portion of the frame rail, with this car being channeled and everything, the frame rail is really in your face with a 33.4. So it always bothered me that you had this big open area if the header's kind of inside and then not having this blister. So we modified that kind of fills it in, gives you that line, that like a beautiful line that 33.4s have. And I'm trying to decide, I may run a hood top, may build a hood top. So trying to get the radiator set. Once Ron had the engine far enough along, he was able to kind of tell me where everything was. This is just a flathead, normal flathead Scott blower, ITAL blower intake with an ITAL blower, just set on top of the block for rough spacing. With the stack up with the Ardun and the adapter plates to fit everything and the carbs, I think it ends up being just a little bit taller than that. Not a lot, but it is going to be a little bit taller. But with how we spaced everything, we have a little bit of play with getting this pulley up a little bit. So I think it'll actually fit okay. What I'm fighting with this car since the beginning is, because it's channeled and we have an Ardun and we have a blower, everything stacks up really quick, and I'm trying to avoid having this car look cartoonish or like some wild altered drag car. I want it to still, I'm just kind of picky about that. So I've been trying to keep everything as low as possible. So even when Ron was doing the carbs and stuff, he made some modifications so that we can mount two big 97s, reproduction 97s. They're actually the big ones, much larger CFM, bigger jets, so we can run it with the engine. So he didn't make an adapter plate, he just modified the top of the blower basically to get that all to fit two carburetors. So a long process. So that is what's going on with this. I was waiting to make the other header on the other side because when I built this set of headers, these are just plastic heads that our buddy Pete found at a swap meet and painted up, and I've just been using for space. They're just mock-up heads. Ron had texted me after I built these headers and said that there's a oil return bung that is right down in here. I didn't realize there's a casting mark in the plastic, but there's no hole, so I didn't realize it. So he was like, you might have some issues there with your headers, so I didn't go any further. So that's why the other side hasn't been done, because I don't want to spend like 2 days building pipes and then have to cut them apart. At least this set, if I cut them apart, it is what it is, but I don't want to do that on the other side. So everything is very tight in this car. So I have the engine drop down as far as I can. With the way the exhaust ports come out on an Ardun, they come out like straight down. So if they would come out more of an angle, like say this Caddy engine there, we would have had no problem at all. It would have been beautiful. They would have came out at an angle, I could have came out. But with this, it's a problem. So I was leaving that alone. But all this stuff's kind of figured out. The firewall is the other thing I got stuck on because there's a bunch of fittings and stuff going on. There's these block off. On the Ardun heads, they had, on the earlier ones, they had water ports on the front and the back of the heads with a block off. So it was basically, you could put the radiator wherever you needed it to be.
Or head on either side.
Or head on either side. So that block off plug, we wanted to use the original ones because it's kind of like a real 32 Roadster with patina. You're kind of like, this is the real deal. So those plugs are something that you're not going to find on reproduction Ardun heads, really. So having those on there kind of is an extra little badge of honor. So that creates stack up, increased tolerances is I think what Ron likes to say, and Ardun said in there.
It's the same problem in every direction.
Yeah, so I need to build this firewall, and I didn't want to have an issue where I build the firewall and then I put the engine in, and like the fittings on the back of the engine for all the oil stuff is an issue. So we get that back, we take care of that. So pedals and master cylinder, all that stuff, we figured all that out, so that's working, that's no problem. I'll just make a new firewall and these will bolt right back up and it should work fine. Working our way back, so when we got this car, we realized quickly that the doors were drooping very badly, like a foot when you would open the doors. It was terrible. So with them cutting the inner structure out, everything was sagging, the quarter panels were pulling in when the weight of the door. They had taken the third hinge out, which is an old way of doing a chop on these 3 windows. Or on 33.4s and 32.3 windows, you would take the third hinge out. I do kind of like that because that is an old way of doing it. So again, looking old and being into the nerdy side of this, I wanted to leave that. So I had to work on fixing the hinges. I got the doors pretty good. The other door is beautiful. This door, I think I still need to bend the hinges a little bit. It drops ever so slightly. Go ahead, in. Go ahead. Good boy. So the door gaps were super tight on this car. I cut them open just to get enough clearance to get the doors to open and shut around the doors. They need a bigger gap cut open because they're still like super tight, and I need to weld everything back up. So when you cut it open, the hemmed over edge opens up, so you need to weld that back together. So I need to cut it back probably another 1/16 or 1/8 inch, probably an 1/8 inch. Weld it back up, grind it all smooth. It's going to be a long process because this is a big door and it didn't fit like anywhere. But got everything pretty close with bending and moving. But the biggest problem I have is, go ahead.
Oh, there's a dog in there.
There is a dog in there. The only part that's really rusty on this whole car is I know, great job. Come on,
hey,
get back, come on.
Hey, we're trying to film a YouTube video here, dude.
It's like, yeah, it's about me.
Squizzy.
Lay down. Can you lay down? Lay down. My God. Right here. Lay down. Or in the car. Get in. Go. Thank you.
He's such a doofus.
Okay. So this rocker is the only part that's really rusty on this car. So I have new rocker strips, but you could see what I had to do in here because stuff had moved around when they had cut this thing and channeled it back in the day. This whole area was like out of shape. So I ended up having to cut down in here because it was all smashed in and deformed. and basically I cut this corner out, and I had sectioned in here to move some stuff around. So I have the inner structure welded into the rocker area that I made, which is the floor also, and it's that works out great. Everything's solid now, but I need to remake all this. So probably one of the next things we're going to tackle is getting the lower rocker strips replaced, fill in this gap here, get everything clearanced, and then at least we don't have big giant holes or rot holes in the car. Everything inside the car is pretty solid now. By doing the floor and that bar that I've been putting in a lot of these cars, it really stiffens it up. On this car, I left the wood. The wood's actually really good in this car. So they had cut and chopped the wood and put bracing plates in, which worked out fine. The wood's pretty darn good, so I made with this bar, it actually pushes on the wood and we have screws run into it. So it's kind of like we preloaded the B-pillar so that when you open the door, the B-pillars aren't rocking forward and back. So that helps a lot with getting these doors to actually open and shut. So he's asleep. So that's what's going on with that. We got to put the seat in. We're going to do that here in a little bit. We have a seat to test. You coming in or out? All right.
Indecisive as it gets.
So yeah, this door hinge is still just this door is just a little low. So when it hits the dovetail, you see how it has to just go up that tiniest bit. So this hinge still, what I was doing when we adjusted all this is you have to bend, like the lower hinge gets bent on these cars a lot of times if the door ever flies open, or in this case, this car was channeled and chopped and just abused. So I did a lot of heating and bending on these hinges to get them even to be this good. I think this lower hinge needs to be bent forward just a tiny bit because that will make the door go like, lift up on this end. And that will get us to the point where you can catch the dovetail in the guide there and it'll just close on its own. It's not bad, but
after a couple of years, that dovetail will be destroyed.
Yeah, that was what happened when I was working on the car. The dovetails for me, from being abused years ago, as soon as I started working on it, the dovetails just like shattered like the third time I tried to close it. So we gotta take care of that. The rear end we have a banjo rear with an early Franklin quick change in it, which is super cool. I found it at the Carlisle swap meet years ago, and it's an original Ford banjo rear that the early Franklins, I think in the 50s, maybe early 60s, he would modify them. He'd take orders and cut, up original banjo housings, weld his own section on, and have his cast aluminum Franklin cover. So it's super cool. It's one of those early nerdy things. It's not that it's better than a Halabrand or anything. It's just neat and old. So I called up Hot Rod Works. We actually met the original owners at Grand National last year. They were staying in the same hotel. Talked to those guys, super nice guys, and they kind of told us about the younger guy that bought the business, and he's doing good things. So we called them up, we'll talk to that gentleman, and I'm going to be sending him this rear, and we got another rear just recently in the mud pit 46.7 parts thing we did in Maryland, and I want to put a wider. So first of all, I want to get a wider. So this is like a 40 style rear.
35 to 40.
35 to 40 rear. And with these tires and wheels and it being channeled, it's really close. So this is how it is on the Schroll car. And when you go around corners with somebody in the car, you smell rubber because the body rocks, it rubs against the sidewall. So I'd like to get a little more clearance. So by putting 46.8 rear in it, I think it's maybe an inch on either side wider, 2 inches wider, get it out of the way. So they're going to do the 9-inch conversion, which is pretty cool. They actually, you can either buy the parts and do it yourself, or they will do it. And basically they put slide-in 9-inch axles in the rear, which gets rid of the original axles with the keyway in it. So with this car, I want to be able to beat on it a little bit. So that is something that definitely needs to be addressed with it's going to make a little more power than an original flathead would. And so we're going to do that, get that all set up, and basically just with trying to juggle projects, I'm just going to pay them to do the whole thing and send me back a rear that's essentially set up. That'll just help move this along. So very soon we're going to be pulling this rear out and sending that other rear all palletized together. And hopefully then I will get a nice, perfect set up rear, put back in it, and build a drive shaft for it. So that's what's going on with that stuff. The rear end of this car is not too bad. I had fixed a ton of damage in an earlier video. Something must have fell on this car years ago, and this was all caved in really bad. And the deck wood didn't even, it seemed like the deck wood wasn't even for this car. So you couldn't even put this in remotely. So
I totally forgot about that.
it was bad. Like,
Yeah.
Steve and I talk about this car often. Like, we're looking, like, he remembers a lot of it. He's like, remember how bad that was? I'm like, I didn't remember. He's like, yeah, dude, you had like, so I had a porta power and all kinds of stuff. It's still wavy. It's a little high right here. So I need to smooth all this out. So with the planishing hammer and dolly and moving stuff around, I should be able to get that kind of going in the right direction again. The trunk actually opens and shuts nicely now, which is pretty cool. And then you can see back here, I have a little area that I never finished for the floor. Just gotta make a little drop down there. So there's a lot of that kind of work that needs to be done.
Are you gonna do anything with the original chop?
I actually like, the profile's good. Right now, it's very, very popular to do the dry lake style chop. I like to call it that. A lot of people call it rolling bones, which they've made it very popular, but guys have been doing that since, forever. But that dry lakes or Bonneville style chop is so popular now. It's almost unusual to see a car that's just straight chopped like this. So when they chop this, they drop it straight down, and you have to add a section here instead of leaning the pillars back. So the work is pretty decent for the age when it was done. Considering the way they channeled the car, it's like two different sets of people did it, because the chop, with doing it with gas welding, is actually decent. I mean, it's by today's standards. Yeah, but they hammer welded it. It's fairly flat. By today's standards, okay, it might be crude, but if you look at we've looked at a lot of real old hot rods, and it is way worse than this. They would just smash it in and let it up. So this car, pretty good. This side here, like where they chopped it, they didn't get it lined up as perfect in this front here. So that's all stuff that I can adjust. I don't exactly know what I'm doing with the car yet. If you guys haven't noticed, a lot of what I've been trying to do in the last recent years is get cars on the road. I'm very, I like to shout about that. I know too many old guys have cars like this that they never finish. So for me, if I can get this car on the road, and maybe it's still ugly, at least I'm driving it. If I drive for a few years, work all the mechanicals out, and then a couple years later I decide I want to give it a shiny black paint job, I can do it. It's just paint. It's just bodywork and paint. So a lot of this type of stuff I'm probably just gonna leave alone for now and just drive it. Get the doors opening, shutting, get the gaps good, dust some primer around the edges maybe, and then just call it good and drive it. Because there's gonna be a year or two of just working out the bugs of mechanical and all that kind of stuff, because this car was in a million pieces and didn't have an Ardun, so there's a lot to work out.
Yeah.
The front end is pretty good. We have the V860 axle and all that stuff kind of figured out. The steering works, so we've done over the past years a lot of the important stuff on the car. So yeah, I think we throw this seat frame in, see if it fits. I haven't sat in the car yet, so we sat with some like foam on the ground, but we didn't put an actual seat frame in there. So where did this come from?
This came from that body shop in New Jersey with all the Ardun parts.
Oh yes, this is the,
or not Ardun, Auburn.
Auburn. Yeah. Oh, okay, so this was, that shop did a lot of Packards, Auburns, Duesenbergs, high-end Buicks and different cars like that. So we had grabbed this frame because it looked about right for an old Ford. Mike had done some measuring. I think he brought this over here like a year ago.
It's been here for a while. I remember we measured the car.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
I think it was sitting over there before we got the acorn table. It's been a while. So
it's been a while. So it's been stuff under the lift for like a very long time. And we haven't tried this yet. We have a little bit of foam. I wanted the idea of having a original type wood frame, because again, when you look at old photos, a lot of times they were using the wood frames, or they would just make bucket seats. I don't necessarily want to do like an aircraft theme and put a bomber seat in this car, trying to dance between that, competition coupe and street coupe kind of car. So I wanted to put this in. I like the look of having an original seat frame, wood frame with the side profile there, and get rid of the giant spring. So hopefully we could set this in, play with some foam, and see what it's gonna feel like. We'll see. All right, so luckily this has massive doors.
Yeah, loading stuff in is pretty easy.
Oh yeah. Width-wise, that's about perfect.
Yeah, I remember measuring it when I was at the warehouse. Like, this is about as good as it gets.
I don't think it would be out of a 33.4. That would be.
No, it's not. The back isn't right. Where that like little step is,
Oh, okay.
that's not right because the seat in my car is from a 33.4
oh, okay.
frame. They had a metal base.
Oh, right. Yeah, yeah. So this has a little bit of a curvature to the back.
The only thing weird about it is that like little step.
I think that's for a bolster,
Yeah.
like maybe
or
in
I
your
was
back.
thinking for a four-door for feet to go under.
Maybe.
But this here you're talking about.
Yeah, the shape in the back is pretty good. It's got a curvature kind of like the rear window has. So that looks kind of right. So I guess I'll hand you the camera. Let me get in and see. I'm going to close the passenger. And then we'll get it. That door is beautiful.
Foam. You want something to sit on.
Moon's ready.
Yeah, he's like, oh, we're getting in?
He is ready. Let me put your phone down, buddy. I like how he's trained now. That it's like his favorite, like just like my favorite thing to do is.
Yeah, I'll post a photo. Matt was upstairs working on the DeLorean car yesterday.
Go ahead.
Hopped right in and laid down on the seat.
I think we got more room in this thing, buddy. Get in. Let's get it. You might not like it with the zoomies.
Yeah. Hello.
Great job, man. Might have to move to the other side. So, I think you could drive this thing. With the seat all the way back, my legs are straight and I'm barely touching the pedals.
I might be able to. I'll have to try and sit in it then. I don't
Yeah.
know if I'll fit vertically though.
Well, you're kind of slouched down in this, so
Yeah.
you lay down, but I definitely need.
I don't know if I'd ever want to drive it. It's a lot of. It's an expensive engine and an expensive car.
wait,
I'll
wait.
ride in it though.
Man, we got to move the seat forward, so you need to get out. Come on, out. Hey,
Come on.
get out. Out,
Come on.
out. Thank you. All right, so being a 3-window, there's a ton of room in this thing.
Moon's like, can I get back in now?
That's a little better. Yeah, so. Yeah, I mean, I could probably even, with me being short, I could probably even afford a little more. Like that. So the hard part is making it so you can get in and out of the car.
Yeah.
So that might be a little too much, but but honestly, I mean, I'm height-wise with my eyes through, everything looks pretty good. You always have to test the arm on the window. Steve and I were talking about that the other day. Like all these cars, straight away you put your arm on the window.
Yep.
Like that's when you know the car's just right. You're sitting just right. So comfortably drive with your arm on the window like this, perfect. But
The nice thing with running the LaSalle too is you basically put a flat.
yeah,
Cover.
it gives you so much more room with the trans because I can build a tunnel cover that's almost flat, and I can put my foot essentially on top of the trans for the gas pedal,
Yeah.
and it's no problem because the shifter doesn't move. I mean, we only have that much side to side. I gotta heat and bend the shifter lever or put a different one on or make a different one. But I can put my foot right on the flat part of the trans once we have the tunnel built, and there's your gas pedal. So like, the only thing that's a little difficult in this car with it being channeled is you want the leverage of the pedals, and I have them heated and bent just kind of roughly where I need them. But I may need to shorten them a little bit because with I guess with sneakers it'll be different, but with boots,
It's hard to get your toe on it.
yeah, you're on the middle of your foot when you're pushing, which isn't terrible, but that's all stuff I need to kind of sort out. But I want to get the firewall in and all that to see really where everything's going to land.
Because once the firewall's in,
I got to push the firewall back a tiny bit, but I don't think it'll be an issue. I'm getting full throw out of these pedals. That feels like a lot, plenty.
actually I think you're hitting the bend in the firewall. So if anything, you're going to bend the top of the pedal out to get more forward swing.
Yeah.
So if anything, you're hitting the top of the firewall first.
Yeah, so the pedal stuff's going to be a little tricky to get all that working, but as far as where the steering wheel is and all that, a lot of these channel cars,
It looks similar to the Schroll car.
yeah, when you're in them, they're a little funny to get into, like bend yourself, but once you're in, especially this car, this feels a lot more roomy than the Schroll car even,
Yeah.
and the Schroll car is not bad for me when I drive it, but this thing, definitely height is going to be a problem. Mike, I think your head might be an issue.
Yeah. I'm going to have to.
But if you push the seat all the way back and you kind of like slouch, you
Yeah.
might fit in it. But it's actually not bad. So we'll probably end up running, same as the Schroll car, just run like 2-inch thick piece of foam with maybe a little bolster under the leg. And it actually is pretty comfortable in that car.
Keeps it nice and locked in.
And then a thin seat back foam, and it should be pretty good. I mean, this is feeling pretty decent. The nice thing with the 3-window versus like the Schroll car, the door is a lot bigger, so the seat bottom, or the seat, like the swoop in the seat side is kind of in the way for you to get in, but with the 3-window, the door opens so much you can literally like crawl. I mean, you're gonna have to like crawl in, but
I'm going to back myself in like a tractor trailer.
yeah, that's pretty much what you have to do, back it up. But I think this is good. I'm glad we saved this seat frame because it is actually about perfect. The wood's decent in it, so we should be able to just send that away to get redone, and it'll be good. So yeah, and I think the gauges, like everything fits. I can see all the gauges really nicely. The moon drop and where the column is feels really good. I don't want to sit any higher though. That's the thing. It needs to be like basically like it is. I mean, I can't.
It looks like the wheel could go up a tiny bit if you need to, if you need room.
Maybe I was trying to keep the wheel from being like
In the way.
in the windshield because the windshield's so short. So if we move this up, then now you're blocking half your
True.
windshield view. So right now, you know, it's pretty good. I get the full view of the windshield. So it definitely makes it difficult having it channeled this far.
Oh my God, yeah.
If it was even unchanneled like 2 or 3 inches, it would be.
Well, we unchanneled it 2 inches.
Yeah, we did. It was like 9
Or was
inches.
it just in the rear?
No, in the front too.
That's
I
right.
unchanneled it all. I unchanneled it all the way because it was like 9 or 10 inches. It was channeled.
This is why Mike will never own a channeled hot rod.
Yeah,
And
so-
it's too goddamn big.
But yeah, so I think we can. Everything else is pretty good. So I think we'll be all right with that. So need to start working on getting a way to mount the seat frame, like find the location and kind of lock it in, and then probably gonna have to get the seat. Start working on getting somebody to make the seat so we can get that really dialed in, because we have to make sure that everything fits me really well. So if we get a seat redone for this and it's actually the way it's going to be, if I have to make some modifications or drop the seat frame down into the floor or something like that, it'll definitely help. So we'll figure it out as we go, but I think that's pretty good. So now we got some definite to-dos on this car. Got to do like I said, the inner rockers and the rocker strips, I think is the next big thing, because that's the only big rot that's left on the car to take care of. Get that done, and then when we get the engine back here very shortly, we're gonna have that back. We're probably gonna test fit the engine and trans in the car, even for temporary, so I can build the firewall, and then we may have to pull the engine in and out, but having the actual engine that we can put in the car is going to really help me connect all the dots, which will be really great. So that's what's going on with the 33.3 window. I know it's a lot of talking, but we had to talk through this, and it seems like people didn't listen to the podcast because we did talk about a lot of that. So yeah, so keep an eye out this car. I'm very excited. I'm going to start putting some focus on it throughout this summer and into the winter. We'll see how far. We'd love to get this thing moving under its own power. We're a lot drivable maybe for the Wheels of Time show in August, but we don't know yet. We'll see what life throws at us for a curveball, but that is the plan. And yeah, it'd be very, very cool. But we're gonna be doing a ton of videos on this and trying to really hit this thing hard, because we got the engine, we got all the major pieces. Now we need to do the work. There's no more bitching about other people having a car, and that's why or shouldn't bitch, excuses.
Yes. Sorry, Ron.
Yeah, not bitching. I wasn't bitching. Sorry. yeah, excuses of like, oh yeah, totally work on that car, but I don't have the engine back, you know. So that's it. Thank you guys for following along. Let me know what you think we should do with the finish of this car. Should it be shiny? Leave it shitty? What should it be in the end? Thanks, guys. Catch you later.